Want to know one of the best ways to dramatically improve your game while reducing stress and confusion out on the course that doesn't require any drastic changes to your current game and skill level? Well then, just like a bad infomercial, join me right after this quick intro to find out how. No matter where you are on your disc golf journey, one of the best things you can do for your game is to really know your discs. And I'm not talking about know the flight numbers and weight, but rather the way they fly for you. How do they fly when you throw them full power? How about for standstill? Forehand, backhand, into the wind, tailwind? How about rollers? Do you know exactly how each disc is going to fly under those conditions? And we're talking about real distances, not internet distances or what you tell your card mates. The good news is that anyone can become a master of knowing their discs. The bad news is that it's going to take some work, field work, and patience, and that's two things we'd rather skip. But if you are tired of being unsure out on the course or wish you could really trust more than the same 3 discs in your bag, then this might be the perfect time to start learning your bag like a professional. Step 1. Get a notebook or an app on your phone. Step 2. Take your bag to the field. Now these are the discs that you're using on a regular basis to begin with. You don't want to start to overwhelm yourself by trying out new discs at this point. Step 3. Throw them multiple times for each type of throw and record the distances and the flight. Make sure to include the different wind directions. In other words, maybe you'll start with a tailwind and then return with a headwind. That's great information. Step 4. Repeat on a different day or many different days to account for inconsistencies in your throwing. You may throw farther one day and a little slower another day. This will help even out the variables, but can also help you understand the correlation between how you're feeling and your distances. In other words, if it's morning and you're groggy and you tend to be 15 feet shorter, that's good to know. How about in the afternoon when you're a little more excited? It might be a 10-foot increase. So the goal is to become an excellent student of yourself. The more variables that you can track down and understand, the more confident you're going to be when those situations arise on the course. Now you have a real-world record of your discs and how to throw them in each of the wind conditions. How helpful is that when you go out to a new course, or you find the wind conditions have changed on your favorite course? If you walk up to a 240-foot hole that goes around a tree with a 10-mile-an-hour headwind, you can look in your notebook and see that you can throw your T-bird 260 feet on hyzer at 85% power with a 5-mile-an-hour headwind. Well, you know exactly which disc to throw and a pretty good idea of how hard to throw it to make that shot. Remember, we're trying to reduce as much chaos and guessing as we can on the course to score better while enjoying the game more. This is also a great way to keep track of the wear and tear of your discs and help you cycle your discs. Your favorite straight flying disc may actually be getting beat up and turning more, and you just haven't been able to see it clearly on the course. I know there have been many times when I've been out there and I've been starting to question whether a disc is messing up or it's me throwing it differently. So whenever I have some disc confusion, I know it's time to go hit the field. This is also a great way to chart your growth. For instance, if today you're throwing 250 feet with your driver and then 2 months from now you find yourself throwing 275 feet, then you have clear data to back up your growth and give you extra encouragement to keep going. So let's talk about how to do this field work. Using a football field is ideal because it has the yardage markers already there. I simply adjust my starting line according to the distances that I'm working on. Goal line to goal line is 300 feet, and each end zone is 30 feet, So from end to end, it's 360 feet. And then if you add the goalpost in, that makes it 375 feet from one goalpost to the other. Now that'll cover most throws, but we'll talk about distance throws a little bit later. I like to throw down the hash lines to give me a great visual indicator of the flight path and how close to straight the discs are landing. Now when I recorded this footage, instead of just taking out my main disc to work on, I was relearning my disc and rebuilding after shoulder surgery. So I started with my putters. You can see which discs are stable and which are flippy and all their distances. But keep in mind, this was just one round. I also threw them back in the opposite wind direction and then repeated the process forehand. And then I did it all over again 2 more times to give me 3 base readings for each throw and disc. But now I have a pretty good indicator of how each of these putters is going to behave for me. So now I just need to repeat this process with my mid-ranges, my fairway drivers, and my distance drivers. Speaking of distance drivers, the main field from goalpost to goalpost is 375 feet, but there's almost always more room behind those. The track and field lines work out to be about 45 feet to the goalpost on this side. So if you add that to 375, you get 420 feet. And then there's at least another 45 on the other side, which makes 465 feet. So most of us won't have to worry about running out of room. But then again, there are a lot of new players out there and 465 is nothing. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned testing for rollers. But you guys are smart enough to figure out how to do that. But that could actually be an individual field time just figuring out how each of your main discs act as rollers. Okay, Pete, but what if you don't have access to a football field with all those pretty lines? Soccer fields, and yes, I know the rest of the world calls it football, are great places, but you need to invest in at least some cones or some flags and a rangefinder, or use the UDisc app to lay out the measurements, or even track one disc at a time. Speaking of UDisc, it has built-in disc tracking, which may be way better for a lot of you younger, smarter players than I am. I am totally old school and I use a notebook. But I also like to draw flight paths and add extra notes. But that's more about that later. In the end, it's not about the field or the notebook you use, but rather it's whatever you're going to use to help you have a clear understanding of how far you can throw each disc in real life and in real weather conditions. Now this is also where we need to get humble, because it's the only way we're going to get better. I have to come to terms with the fact that I might not be able to throw as far as Drew Gibson, but I can be as deadly as Michael Johansson if I work at it. You see, long distance is good, but controlled, precise distance is better almost every time. So I learned that I can throw my beat birdie 240 feet max with no wind, and only 150 feet forehand with a tailwind. But wow, what an advantage that is when faced with a new shot or new situation. I've taken a lot of the guesswork out of it, and I can throw with more confidence and less stress. Okay, so here's the test, here's the question. If I grab a disc out of your bag, can you run down the parameters of how you can make it fly to the average of a foot or two? If you can get to that level of knowledge of your own game, then you're well on your way of becoming a very dangerous player. And the great news is, no big arm is required. Okay, here's another thought that I alluded to a little bit before. Think about having a Caddy book. It's got all your disc information, but you also start plotting out and navigating your plans of play on each course. So when you show up to a new course and you play a quick practice round, you're sketching out ideas of where to throw, where not to throw, what disc to use. You're mapping out your game plan so you don't have to think about it under the stress of actual play. Also, this is a great way to start showing where your discs may overlap or tend to fall short. There should be a tactical reason why each disc is in your bag, including having a backup of your key workhorse disc just in case you lose one of your precious children. But it's also a way that you can start to cycle new discs in because you have field tested them and know that they fly the same as your favorite disc. So guys, let's make the field your friend and your secret weapon. I want you to work smarter and you're going to see the results in the basket. Okay, now for some final thoughts. What is your personality and your training goal? Because these are going to affect what you do and how you do. Okay, some of the things we don't think about is what kind of personality do you have when you're training? Are you a details person or just kind of a wing it and that'll do kind of person? I tend to wing it a lot. And so I knew that about myself, so when I started to do this video a while back, I decided I was going to do this right and be very detailed. So I bought this window meter thingy, dang it, window meter thingy, so I could track the wind, direction, speed. And then I bought this radar thingy. I know that's another technical term. And I was going to track every throw, what the arm speed was and everything with that. But the problem was I couldn't be bothered to read the manual, and I tried it the first time. I couldn't get it to work, and so I tossed it. I didn't even use it. And the whole thing was I figured out it's just not me. I can't put all that stuff together. It would overwhelm me, the data and trying to track all that stuff down. It was bad enough just going and marking down where each disc was in distance. I couldn't just keep adding more and more information on there because it was just going to pile in on me. You may love this stuff and love Excel spreadsheets and tracking all this data and hope that inspires you to get out there and do that because that will get you going out there. It just wasn't for me, so I had to take in consideration how much I could do that still matched my personality and moved me along. And the second thing to keep in mind is what your goals are for disc golf. And that will affect your training goals. Are you trying to become the next big thing? Or are you just enjoying your rounds? You see, I'm just trying to maintain and enjoy my game at this point. I've played enough in the past that I don't need to keep thinking about it. My competing was decades ago. And so I'm not going to be so intense about my training. I have to balance it with my life, my kids, and my job. However, if I'd had this stuff and these ideas back when I started in the 90s and I was trying to become a very good player, I would have read the manual, kept the data, the radar, everything. I would have done everything I could because that's how I was going to become a top level player. And so if you really have the goal of getting to be a phenomenal player, it may mean that you're going to have to sacrifice and do a little bit more. Track this stuff more. Be very fastidious with what you do. I'm kind of doing it because it's helping me move forward, but I'm not that uptight about it. You've got to decide what your goal is for the future and how much you want to invest in it. It's always a trade-off. One of the great things about doing this, when you can go back and look at the data from, say, 3 months, 6 months, a year ago, and see where you were throwing these discs and where you are throwing now, you'll think, oh man, I could throw that buzz 250 feet straight down the alley. And now you're looking, I'm throwing it 325 feet straight down the alley. You're like, man, all right, I'm figuring this thing out. Or better yet, you're seeing that all your distances and your discs are becoming just ingrained in you, and you know them without having to really look at the book because you've done the work in the past and now you're just building on it season by season, and it's just part of your process. So anyway, I just love the idea of knowing your discs so that you can play with your best potential, with your full confidence, and just step up and know, this is the disc I need to throw. So often with these big bags of discs, and you've got all these discs, there's chaos and confusion of which disc to throw. Did I grab the right one? Ooh, I don't know about that. Man, if you could eliminate a lot of that, how much freer would you be out on the course? Anyway, just my thoughts. And I know I rambled on, but I tend to do it, and if you're sticking around with me, you're a glutton for punishment. I do appreciate it. I hope this inspired you, and once again, I truly do hope to see you out on the course.